beautiful lovelies. It has been a long time, I am aware. Welcome back. As you can see on this screen, we're going to do a little dual duty. We're going to talk about something that affects both Yerbus and Bitorium and migrations into Smartnode management for both. I do apologize if the AC kicks on in the background. I am on the top floor here in the lovely Las Vegas. It is hot as today, so it is what it is. If the AC kicks on, I apologize. Alright, real quick announcements. Real quick. Everything's really going good with those two communities. I got named Yerb Person of the Month, which was kind of cool. Won a $10,000, sorry, not $10,000, 10,000 Yerbus bounty. I wish Yerbus was $1 per Yerbus. That'd be flipping awesome. But it was 10,000. It was really cool. Thank you guys. Shout out to y'all over there. It's been fun messing with y'all, dealing with y'all. I love y'all. And this video really does go out to the Yerbus community. They're the ones that asked about it, and this is actually based off of a bit of code that was given to me by the leader of the Bitorium community. So if he comes back later and says, man, you really should take this down, I will. The code that we're going to talk about is in the description of this video. There will be a link to a Google Doc that should be open to the public. If not, let me know in the comments. We'll go from there. But yeah, there's a link in there that'll have two sections. If you're doing it for Yerbus, obviously kind of follow along with what's on the screen there. I'm going to be looking at it on a text file, which reminds me I should probably open up said text file. Give me 1 second here to find where did I put it? First we want to find the Yerbus service. Alright, so what you're going to see is a version of this if you're looking at the Yerbus. And if we open I don't know what's all in that list, so y'all can't see it. Y'all can't see me. Anyway, if you're following along for the Bitorium, these are what they look like. They are effectively the same. Obviously, the word Yerbus has been swapped around. These are identical in code. They do effectively the same thing, and we're going to go over that a little bit more. So if you're watching along on this video and you're for Yerbus, follow along with the code that's going to look like this in the Google Doc. If you're for Bitorium, obviously follow along. But when I make reference to these kind of things, these are what we are talking about. Just swap the word Bitorium for Yerbus, and this daemon will wind up effectively running the same. But more on that in a second. Let's pray I emptied the cache. I did not. Alright, so we are going to try this out with a Yerbus. Right? This ultimately will also work for Bitorium, so we're just going to pick on Yerbus because I don't think I'm actually running the newest salad fork, which was the this one. I think I'm actually running this one. So we are going to update ours. So we're not really going to download things here. What we are going to do is launch in to the VPS. Nice little double clickable thing. And then oh yeah. Remember which this is. So this is ARM architecture. Okay, good. Some of these smart nodes I run, they're x86 and some are Ampere, so this is important to know. So clearly this is an ARM architecture, so we are going to want the ARM 64. Right. So we are going to just copy the link address. Now, I do want to point out that this smart node has already been converted. So the first thing that we're actually going to do is we're going to wget this file, right? It's going to download it to the user that I've logged in. And this particular unit has multiple instances running. So if we are being honest, I gotta remember. Oh, I forget the category to show Linux user. Yeah, I forget this command all the time. And I think this is the one that I use a lot. I think either one of these will effectively be good for you. So let's copy. Oh, it did not copy. Huh, error. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So what we're looking at here are the users that I have installed, and this will in general show you all of the users that you have, but most importantly the ones that I want are here, right? And then we are also going to look at, we're going to bring up this, and we are going to look at what's in this folder. Okay. So these are all the services that we have installed. So we do have a Bitorium service, Bitorium SM1, SM2, that should be for Yerbus, and Yerbus SM1. I don't know why I thought I had more installed here, but that's fine. So we are going to, since these are custom, sudo systemctl stop. Okay. Oh, right, because that one doesn't exist. I stopped naming them that. Okay, so there should be no more Yerbus running, and to verify that, we can look in htop and see that, there should not be any more of those daemons running for either Bitorium or Yerbus. I really thought this node had more of them, but irrelevant. Okay. So we cd back to the main, ls. Alright, we need to untar this file. I think the F has to go last. I always forget. Yeah, we're good. Okay, now normally I would, move or rename all of this. I don't actually keep these anymore, so what we're going to do is cd into the Yerbus build. At least not on this node I do that. So the most important thing here is that we are effectively just going to move the Yerbus CLI and the Yerbus D into a more centrally located spot. So we are going to sudo, because where we're moving it to is protected, cp Yerbus-CLI and Yerbus D into /usr/bin. Okay. What we have done is we have now made it so that you can call Yerbus D and Yerbus CLI from anywhere. You do not need to actually go to this user bin folder. This is how you do it in Linux. So if we go back here and we simply type yerbusd, we're not going to because that will cause some other issues. I don't actually want to do that because this user's never been set up to run yerbus. But if you did type yerbusd right now, it would launch into that. So what we are going to do though is, because we do want to simulate that, so now all of the other services have started. So let us say sudo systemctl control start Gitorium SM01. Okay, we're good there. Yerbus SM01. And then SM02. Now, the reason that I stopped this naming convention, when I use the full names like that, that should mean that they're actually being referenced by an IP4 number versus the SM02. We're now dealing with a IPv6, and since Gitorium doesn't yet support IPv6, that's why that gets dropped out. So first things first, we're going to create a new user. And we're going to name them test01. Test. Yep. And then we're going to add them to sudo. Okay. Now we're going to go to root, so sudo bash, and to get around the password, su test01. Alright. Okay. So now we are going to make a directory for yerbus core. Okay. It's a hidden directory, and it's where it should be, and we are going to go to that directory, and we're going to nano a couple of files. This is just for ease later, so there's nothing in it, and nano yerbus.conf, if I can spell. Okay, and we are going to RPC user equals testing go fuck yourself. That's the user, and then we are going to say RPC password equals some ridiculous thing. Doesn't really matter because this account's going to be, oh yeah, I'm going to, great, I'm just going to mess around. This whole thing is going to get deleted fairly quickly, so doesn't really matter. RPC port, you do want to make sure that it's not in conflict with any other port that you're using, so we're going to say for the RPC daemon, so let's just do this one. Don't do this, just ignore this, and then server equals 1. Actually, I think it's daemon equals 1, server equals 1, listen equals 1. Now, we're not going to bind it, and we're not going to do the BLS key because ultimately this doesn't really matter. But now that we're in the test user, we can go back to the main thing, and we can, effectively just type yerbusd here, and then we are going to tail that debug file right? And that's a pretty cool trick, so now you can launch YerbusD from anywhere. Oh, I screwed something up. Oh, right. We are going to have to bind it. So if config-a, I think this one. Copy. And no. Alright, so what you saw there this isn't really needed, by the way. Okay, so what you saw there was that it couldn't start the daemon because it is running, and it's running on 2 other users on this particular machine. So for every new user, you do have to bind it to a new IP. Now Yerbus has the advantage of being able to be bound to an IP6 IP, so we are going to save it that way, and then hopefully now when we do this, it will run and it will not shut down. Yep. Yeah, okay, we're good here. Now this will take a long time because I haven't done any of the bootstrapping. So there's no POW cache here, there's no bootstrap, and it will be very, very slow. But that's fine. This would effectively run the way that you would expect. Now, most times what people will do is they will make a Crontab. What? I'm probably misspelling it. Wow. Oh. I wonder. Yeah, so I'm using a minimal version. It might not actually be installed. You know what? Let's find out. Yeah, so I use a minimal version of the operating system to save space, because when these start getting bigger, they become problematic. Yeah, that's what I thought. Interesting. Alright, so apparently we can't even use Crontab on this machine, which is fine, because this machine has been converted. So for those of you that do use Crontab, what you would want to do is either get into your Crontab by the command that I can't use, and either comment the whole line out by putting a # in front of it, because typically it'll be something like @reboot /user/bin. That would typically be the line YerbusD /user. So this would typically be the line that would be in your Crontab file, right? Now clearly what you would do there is either comment it out, or you could just delete the whole line. Then you would save the Crontab, right? We are going to do something completely different. So I do want to make sure now that we are not running. I keep getting pinged. So we are running YerbusD, and we can see it right here. So we're going to get out of this and say yerbus-cli stop, right? The Yerbus core stopping. And this is what I mean by being able to now issue these commands from anywhere inside the system. But do keep in mind that they are user dependent. So this is only going to stop the Yerbus core in user test 001. And this is important. So that way, like I said, I have 2 other users running Yerbus on this particular machine, so it's not stopping them, it is only stopping this one here. So obviously the first thing that you want to do is move your Yerbus stuff into a centrally located space, because that is really, really important, and that is the /user usr/bin. Move your Yerbus stuff, the Yerbus CLI and the Yerbus D daemon, into there by using sudo cp wherever it was from to wherever it's going. Okay. So now, even because I can't do cron, what we are going to do is from an account that has sudo, which is why we gave this particular account sudo access, what we are going to do is copy this first line. So in the file that you have, if you're looking at the Yerbus section, it'll say sudo nano etc systemd system yerbus.service. This will create a service named Yerbus, but for our purposes, what I've started to do is name them after the user accounts that they're being named. So in this one, it'll be test01, and if you wanted to delineate it, Yerbus, right? That'll name the service. But do keep in mind that when you go to issue this, you'll also have to start, stop, and reboot it by naming it whatever is before the period. Right, so we say sudo nano system Yerbus. Okay, this file will be empty because we haven't created it yet. Copy everything down to the wanted equal multi-user.target, paste, and it will kind of start looking like something that's mostly human readable. But now we get to go through and start changing things that are relative to us. So obviously for the username here, we're putting test01 because that is the username of this account. So in the next one, we are absolute referencing the home of test01 and that hidden Yerbus core folder. This line is important even though it's commented it out. We'll get to that later. And then right here, what this is saying is start the Yerbus D. Now, what this daemon will do is, we'll get to a little bit later, it will both start and stop. So after you institute this daemon, you will no longer be able to start Yerbus D by the Yerbus D daemon or stop it by using Yerbus-CLI stop, because that just simulates a crash. This will be how you use this command in the future. Test01, test01, and the same thing here. Test01. Basically just remove every username reference to the user that you're using. Do not issue this from root. It is unwise to put these smart nodes and these daemons in root because this code will then activate all the time and it will throw errors. So realistically, this is really designed for those who are running smart nodes from a particular user, and ideally more than one user on a particular machine. Right? So now that we have renamed all of this, we hit out to save the file, X to close the file, and then right here we say test01. This will enter a file, a line into the Yerbus comp file for this particular user, which we can now read. Right. So as you see, it added this line, this PID equals run / Yerbus PID, which is, this over here. Interesting. All right, but you only do that once. You do not need more than one of those lines. More than one line will particularly create a problem. All right, now you need to reload all your systemD daemons, and that's what this line does. All of them are reloaded. Now, this has to match what you named it up here. All right, so if this is what you named it, all right, because now we need to copy, enable it, If you don't get any garbage text below this and you get another prompt back into the terminal with no red or yellow text, you're good. Absolutely good. And now you will be able to start this daemon using this command. That is just like typing Yerbis D and Yerbis CLI. Now, I do want to point out, so let's open up another instance of the VPS. It's the same VPS, just different screen. We are going to tail that debug file again. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Because I don't have a direct way of logging in here. Okay. So the idea here is that it is doing something, and it is being very, very slow, and that is perfectly fine for our purposes, because this is, we're not really going to use this, so it being slow is not my greatest concern. What is one of my more greater concerns is that you can't use Yerbis-CLI stop. Pay attention what happens on the left screen to what happens when I enter this command. Right? It stops, and then it restarts. Interesting. Anyway, this basically now simulates what would happen if the daemon crashed, and that's really the power of a systemD. See, crontabs are great for starting the daemon one time, but as some of you have noticed, once the daemons start crashing or having errors, primarily with those of you that do not enable swap, you know who you are, your daemons will crash. Enough daemons crash, the whole VPS will effectively crash along with it. What this does is it detects, oh, this thing has crashed, shut it down, reboot it. And that is what we had seen in some of this other code. Oops, wrong one. Not the Torium one. That's the code relative in here. On a restart, or when it'll restart is on a failure. And a failure can be simulated by this, right? Because once again, it'll fully shut it down, and if we can pay attention and catch it fast enough, you'll see the shutdown command followed by, yep, restarting. The shutdown command was somewhere, there it is, and then it restarted, right? And that is exactly what it's supposed to do. Okay? So this can also be replicated here. Obviously, if you're doing it for Bitorium, it'll be Bitorium, but effectively the same. Also, do keep in mind that whatever you name it on this side of the dot service is how you have to reference it here. Okay? So how do you stop it? Well, you would say sudo systemctl, which is how you control it now. Stop. Your, what is it, test 01? Nah, that's right. Oh, that's what I called it. That's why it's important to remember what you name these things. That's why I started referencing them by users' names. So now what we will see over here, paying attention, we should get the shutdown request, and it should not restart. It is taking a little bit of time, but that's because it's trying to load, or it's trying to actually initialize, and we're just stopping it from working right. But as you can see here, we got the shutdown request, and it didn't try to reboot. So that is actually how you start and stop your Yerbis daemons going forward. And it would also work for Bitorium. They're interchangeable. So if you're dealing with Yerbis, Bitorium, but effectively they function the same. But if you are running multiple Yerbis instances, you can now get rid of the cron tabs with these, and not only do they have the added advantage of working when you boot the instance back up, they will launch the first time with no need of cron, and they will also reboot the application, or in this case the daemon, on a failure that it detects. So if it stops working for some reason, it will attempt to reboot the daemon. It's not 100%, but systemD is quite a bit powerful than the old cron way of doing things. And a lot of people reference the cron way because, well, the cron way used to be the great way, and it was pretty much how all these were written originally, is for Crontab. But I do the right one. I can't remember how many levels I've... There we go. I've logged in on that account. So yeah, this is just a quick down and dirty little video that I wanted to do for... Oh, don't tell me. Oh. Well, on the bonus side, well, so now we get to do that all over again, but in reverse. Well, shit, people. Why didn't you tell me? So apparently what happened was this screen never disabled. So you didn't see any of what I was doing. Well, damn. All right. So apparently we boffed up big, and I'm trying to figure out how to salvage this video. Oh, it was so nice too. I had everything almost working, but these videos are always like that, aren't they? Right? Well, let's start over from scratch, shall we? Alright, so first things first, let's log back into your VPS. I've explained this in the past that these are just executables, so that way I don't have to use passwords. First thing what we're going to do here is we're going to sudo apt update and sudo, I can spell today, I cannot, apt dist grade dash yes. All right. We're going to clean this up and we're going to simulate doing all of this over from scratch. All right. Sudo reboot. So what had happened was, for those of you who are joining late, we had this screen up. And it basically blocked everything that I was doing. So we're going to go over this a little bit more while this reboots. So in the description for this video, there's a link to a Google Docs that will have all of this. They're separated. One will say Yerbus service. Once you get down here, actually I think it'll say Yerbus. Yerbus. Username. And man, I cannot spell today. Okay, so it'll have these two files in, or I'm sorry, these two descriptors in one file, and I think they're separated by equal signs and asterisks. And I think the Yerbus one is first, so once you see this line here, this is the last line for Yerbus, and this is for Bitorium. These can be used interchangeably. Now, what we're doing here is we're managing a host with multiple services. So let's log into the VPS after it's been cleaned up, and we're going to sudo apt auto remove if there's any garbage to be removed. Nope, we're good. And what we're okay, so how many of you? All right, so let me just start over because I have befuddled myself. So this particular VPS is an ARM-based system. It's Oracle's Ampere, right? So because of that, I'm going to need the ARM. So we're going to wget. This is the newest version. Many of you, this has already been out for a while. This is not new. You shouldn't have to do this if you already have it. In my case, I knew I was actually using this 3.1.1.5 on this particular VPS. So one of the things I wanted to do was update it. Now, what many people do is they just tar this file in a particular user. So right now we're logged in as the Kojak user. So we would just tar this with VFX. No, I think XF. Oh, how about you put it in the right spot? How about that? So tar-VFX. That's right, I think the F has to be last. Yeah. Alright, then we're going to move the Yerbus-build to Yerbus version 3.1.2.6. Now, many of you will reference this, you know, by saying cd that, right? So it'll have this. You will simply just boot the Yerbus D and the Yerbus CLI functions by calling this long path name. So if you wanted to do this, it would be, you know, sudo Yerbus-v 3.1.2.6 / Yerbus D, right? And that's how you would start this, which is fine. But what we are going to do is move them into a more centralized location. But where that central location is protected. But the advantage of moving these files there is that when you want to update this in the future, you can do this pretty centrally. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to stop all instances of the Yerbus from running on this system. So first I need to go to system, and then I need to see the services that are listed here. We have a Bitorium one, we can ignore that. We have SM2, which is one of my Yerbus ones that I created, and there should also be a Yerbus SM1 service. So these do run Yerbus on other accounts. So we have to sudo system control, systemctl, stop Yerbus 01. Oh, Yerbus SM01 for Smartnode. How about that? And then just Smartnode 02. Now the reason that I delineated one Yerbus is because Smartnode 1 references them off of IPv4, whereas every other SM would reference them off of IPv6. So because of that, I don't need to delineate any more smart nodes, who they're for, because Bitorium can only run on IPv4 at this current point in time. So that's what all of this was about. So we cd ls cd yerbus dash version 3.1.2.6. Alright. Now we sudo, oh yeah, we can, I know what they are, sudo cp yerbus d and yerbus dash cli into /usr/bin. By doing this, we have now allowed us to simply say, if I enter this yerbus d right here, actually let's do one better so we can even get out of this file, right? So now we're back at the home directory for Kojak. If I enter yerbus d, it should effectively run. Now it won't, because we know that there are some errors, but that's all well and good. So from this directory though, we need to create a new user. So sudo add user, and we're just going to call them test. Okay. Test. Doesn't matter. None of this matters. Just like Carl says, this user will be gone in a second. So we're going to sudo add this user test to a sudo, because we do want them to have some sudo capabilities, which is fine. Elevate to bash, or elevate to root via sudo bash. So now we're at the root level and we're going to switch user test. And this is just to get around the fact that I don't like typing in passwords on the screen, if I can get around it. Okay. So as of right now, there should be no Yerbus daemons running in the background. All of them should be stopped. And if we want to look at that, yep, just the Bitorium ones, which is fine. See? Bitorium, 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 no Yerbus. Good, good, good. Shouldn't cause a problem, but whatever. So we're going to make a directory, and any of those that are familiar with the Smartnode process, we're going to call it Yerbus core, because this folder is where you default into doing all of your stuff for the Yerbus Smartnodes, and we're going to change directory into that Yerbus core. Right. Now, this time we are going to do things a little bit differently. We are going to bootstrap it. See, everything's right where it should be. And all nice and clean. Now, once we are here though, we do want to make a debug.log file, out x, and we want to make a yerbus conf. And we want an RPC user equals some dumb ass user, and we want an RPC password, and this will be, I don't know, some random characters. Doesn't really matter. This is gonna effectively be deleted in a minute anyway. And RPC port. This is important. We do want to make sure it doesn't conflict with any other RPC ports that you're using. So I'm going to do this, and then RPC allow equals 0.0.0.0/0. Okay. Server equals 1. No. Daemon equals 1. Server equals 1. Listen equals 1. Oh, I forget. Right, so we do need an ifconfig-a. We do need to bind it to an address that we're not already using. This is the one I haven't used yet. So I have, as you see here, multiple addresses, and the reason I'm picking on Yerbus for this description is Yerbus allows for external IPs to be IPv6, and we're also going to bind it just to make sure to port 15420, right? That bind isn't ultimately necessary, but for our purposes, it will be. Okay? So, typically what you would do is Crontab-E. Now, this is a minimal version of Ubuntu, and I don't use Crontab anymore, but apparently I can't get it to work anyway. But many of you will have this working as, you know, in Crontab you will have @reboot, you know, because we put this in the USR bin file now, and it'll be yerbusd, right? This would be effectively your entry, or wherever the path to yerbusd is. This is how most of you are booting your yerbusd, and this is perfectly fine. If you want to disable it, there's a couple of ways to do it. If you want it non-destructive, you just open your Crontab and put the hashtag or the # or whatever you want to call it before the @reboot. Save it by using Control-Alt or Control-O and then Control-X, or you can just delete the line and do the same thing. Control-O, Control-X, and it removes it from the Crontab, right? But this, so that's the one part of it. So we're going to go back out to the main and say, so from the test user, we're going to yerbusd, and we are going to tail that. Oh yeah, it's that time of the day where the internet gets slow. Yerbus core /debug.log. Right? Right, and this is all of the fun stuff. If you see this, you're in good standing. That means your shit is working correctly. Right? But this isn't what we want. We actually don't want this. So that was just prefaced off of this right here. It was the tail part isn't important. As you can see, we can now just call it that way. kind of a neat feature. And if we want to stop it, we can just do yerbus-cli stop, right? And the yerbus core is stopping. All right. So now what we're going to do is from the file that you're reading, that's the Google documents that's shared in the description of this video, we're looking at this first line here, sudo nano etc systemd system, and this yerbus service, what I have started doing is matching it to the name of the user. Now, I don't use the yerbus anymore, but for your purposes, it might be helpful. So this user would be test, right? And then we go down here and say test. These all have to match, right? So we are going to create this service by saying sudo nano blah blah blah. Okay. Now starting with this upper pound key here and going all the way down to wanted by equals multi-user target blah 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 blah. We just copy and then paste. Okay. And now it's a little bit easier to read, and the text files are kind of hard and obnoxious, but if yours looks like this, you're in good shape. So we can kind of read, it's a yerbus node daemon. It's after where it's going to be working. Now the first thing you want to start changing here is to match the user to the user that you're running from. So in our case, first username. Basically every username in this file we're going to replace with the username that you're in. Since we are called test, that is where we will be putting all of this stuff. Test. Do keep an eye on this particular line right here. That'll come in handy a little bit later. And now here's why we put things in the USR bin file, because now we can use this line of code for every user that we have, making the management a little bit easier. You will have to create a new service for every user that you do, but super simple. And the same thing for the stopping, the yerbus CLI, as you see the command up there. We replace this username with the word test. You will use your username for the user that you are installing it on. Be good. At this point in time, we are now done. So you Control O to write out, Control X. Now in our case, this will add a line to the comp file. You can either do this from terminal by copying this and making sure that it's home, the name of your user, blah, 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 right? So we do that. Or we can also do it if we just nano right, adds this line to the bottom. Should be at the bottom. If you don't want to do it this way, that's perfectly fine. You just PID equals /run /yerbus.pid. Make sure it is at the bottom of the comp file. Once we are done here, now we need to reload all of our systemd daemons. So we reload all the daemons. We enable that one that we just built. Okay. If there is no red or green or yellow text after this, you're good. If it just says this, you're golden. If there is, disable the service, delete the file, reload, issue this reload daemon again to get it out of memory, and then start over. There was some kind of error in your shenanigans. All right. So we are going to copy that last one. This is how you start and stop yerbus from now on. But the other thing that we're going to do is we are going to tail Right. And this is exactly as expected. The yerbusd is now running. Getting back in here. Sudo bash su test. Now we are back in the test user again, because I don't actually have a login for tests remotely, because Oracle demands that you log in by key file, and there isn't one for this user, primarily because I'm going to delete it shortly after this video. Okay, so why can't you use Yerbus CLI to stop? Good question. In the context of what the daemon is now doing, the daemon will view that as the same as the application having some kind of error or crashing. So if you wanted to simulate a crash, you'd say Yerbus CLI stop. Will take a minute. I do know that because it's busy trying to do stuff, it will take a while. But effectively, it simulates a crash, and it doesn't actually shut down. Okay, so there it's received the shutdown command, and we have restarted again. Okay, so you can no longer use Yerbus CLI to stop in the same way you shouldn't use yerbusd to start, because you're just going to keep rehashing the demands, or rehashing the startup command, and it'll cause errors with your comp file. So how you stop is sudo systemctl stop, whatever you named that file. So for us, what was it? Test yerbus. Okay. Give it a second, because it's that time of the day where the internet just be being slow. It is being really slow. Okay. And as you can see, it's finally got the shutdown command, and it isn't trying to rehash the server. So that is actually how you start and stop the daemon. And it's also nice because this daemon will automatically restart on system reboot. Okay. This is why it's a little bit more powerful. Well, actually, it's a lot more powerful than the Crontab methodology. Cron is great for starting the yerbusd or Bitorium-D daemons on startup, but that's all it can do. It can't really detect for a crash state, which this one so plainly can. This code was supplied to me by the leader of the Bitorium group, Marius. So all thanks and credit go to him. He's the one that gave me this code, because in his self-installation code, because I think you can actually install Bitorium Smartnode stuff directly from a sudo apt install request. I've never done it. That automatic stuff doesn't really interest me. It does some, not me. I prefer the manual methodology of managing and installing, primarily because I do run multiple nodes on a particular piece of hardware. I think this one is set up to do 4 nodes. I'm sorry, 4 simultaneous Yerbus smart nodes and 1 Bitorium smart node, although I can add a second IPv4 to make it 2. This node is designed to run multiple nodes, so if you're putting 1 VPS to 1 node, then using Crontab is probably okay. But for those of you out there that are getting crafty and now know that, you know, we can have multiple IPv6 for yerbusd, so we can use all 3 of these addresses. It adds a little bit more complexity into the issue. Some of you have noticed that your VPSs effectively crash and stall out. This is part of the problem. Yeah, it is a swap file issue, as we have determined. You definitely needed more swap than what you were running, but this will also take an individual daemon, interrogate it, look to see if that particular one has crashed, and attempt to reboot it. So if you're hosting, what are you hosting now? 39 Smartnodes on a single VPS instance, you know who you are. Each one of these services will now interrogate the individual user and the daemon for that particular user, so you can actually have one, or you can have all of those daemons running at the same time and interrogating individually to see where the particular problem is. Alright, now that we have shown that, sorry about the first half of the video the first time. If there are any questions, comments, and concerns, go ahead and drop them down there. Maybe I'll remake this video to be more concise in the future. Outside of that, have a great rest of your day. I love y'all. Stay petty. Bye.